Okay, so I would like to welcome everyone here today on behalf of the Ensemble Resonanz and the ZKM Karlsruhe, who is our cooperation partner in this project and host of this event. We have several things and topics in mind for this evening. We here at the first panel want to introduce and present the digital audio interface Einklang freier Wesen, which is an example, or better, is a result of how 5 international ensembles from Hamburg, Vienna, Cologne, Frankfurt, and New York respond together to the COVID-19 related constraints on performing music. And through this audio interface, the ensemble work Einklang freier Wesen by Georg Friedrich Haas can be digitally and interactively experienced. Just before we start with our panel, for which we have estimated about 45 minutes, I would like to briefly outline the course of this event, which will continue with 2 keynote speeches by Georg Friedrich Haas on his composition and of Peter Weibel on the topic of telesociety. Followed then by a discussion about the opportunities and challenges of digital music experience and its impact on society. That is moderated by the musicologist and journalist Martina Seber, and the speakers are Gina Emerson, a member of Grinham, the composer Sandeep Bhagwati, Ludga Bruma from the hertz-labor of ZKM, Barbara Lüneburg, Professor of Artistic Research in Linz, and Teresa Bayer, music journalist and curator. And then to complete this event, we will end the evening with the sound performance of the entire piece Einklang freier Wesen as a 3-dimensional sound installation from the ZKM Klangdom. Yeah, so finally today we present a digital audio interface, a project that started last year in spring as a cooperation of Ensemble Resonanz, Ensemble Modern, Ensemble Musikfabrik, Klangforum Wien, Thalia Ensemble in New York, ZKM Karlsruhe, and the design company WAF from Hamburg. The initiative came from the Ensemble Resonanz, and preparations began while still in lockdown last spring, which means in consultations with Georg Friedrich Haas, Bas Wichers, and Sebastian Schottke, the ensembles developed a way to record the 10 solo works, each titled Aus freier Lust verbunden, that make up the ensemble piece Einklang freier Wesen by Georg Friedrich Haas from 5 different cities and spaces, so 2 works per city and ensemble. And we involved the Ensemble Modern and Musikfabrik Köln, as well as Thalia Ensemble New York and Klangforum Wien in this project, that are all ensembles that are connected and normally very close to us, but became so departed and afar in this period of the worldwide lockdown. On the one hand, they represent the independent classical music scene in Germany, and on the other hand, the Heimat of Georg Friedrich Haas with his hometowns Vienna and New York. And Bas Wichers took over the coordination and musical interaction through remote or video recording, video conducting, as well as a kind of electronic artist briefings for the musicians. At the ZKM, the soloist recordings were then further developed into an integral multi-channel production. Well, yeah, this interface was developed by the ZKM and WAF for both the digital and physical playback of the resulting multi-track, which activates the listeners and opens up an individual path of listening to them. Yeah, we all have them here almost. So, which is Tim Erik Winter playing viola in the Ensemble Resonanz and is ensemble board dramaturg. Seron Park plays cello. Bas Wichers, principal conductor, guest conductor of Klangforum Wien, Sebastian Schottke, sound engineer at the ZKM Karlsruhe. Malte Müller is graphic designer and code writer at WAF. And I would directly start to pass on my first question to Tim Erik, who had the idea of this project. So how did you came up with this idea, and what role does the composition of Georg Friedrich Haas plays in it?
To unmute. Yeah, I think we all have to kind of go back 1 year. It's already 1 year that we are in this complicated situation. And when I look back 1 year, I have the feeling we were all struck by this very sudden event that the world is sort of on hold. And at the same time, we were also overwhelmed by a lot of activities and streaming activities from almost every living room in this world. And I had the feeling we should look for something that is more vital somehow, and could somehow be more connected to the idea of not being together, but still being connected somehow. And of course, I mean, the names of these works by Georg Friedrich Haas were very appealing to me. I think they kind of fascinated me, and I knew them before. I was never really convinced that the solo works are so very strong, but I was more captured by this ensemble piece, Einklang, freier, Wesen, and I think in the beginning of this first lockdown, we were still kind of fascinated by the idea of a cäsur, of something that is really changing the world, maybe. And also, I mean, even in the press, we had a lot of articles writing about the opportunities that we might have in this, with this lockdown, with this very strong change that we experience. And so I liked the idea of something poetic and also hymnisch, maybe, that this Einklang, freier, Wesen would sound like. And so I was, yeah, a little bit fascinated by this utopian idea of being connected, being verbunden aus freier Lust. Yeah, I think this was the main idea, the main feeling that I had at this time. Does it explain anything to you?
Of course. And so did you think from the beginning about playing out this work in a digital way?
No. I was, I mean, I had no idea how to do it. And the first thing I could think of was to call Sebastian, because we worked together a lot and we talked about the technical aspects, and also if it would at all make sense to produce especially this work, because it's very challenging for every soloist, and the idea to kind of bring it together was very far in the beginning, and then we had to think a lot about how to do it, and we came up with different solutions. In the end, we chose to have this remote conducting by bass. But I think it's very important to think about the technical approach that Sebastian found recording it.
Mm-hmm. But Sebastian, you were involved from the first moment, but were you already into it? Well, or you gave instructions for how to record the pieces in the different cities and places?
Yes, it's funny that what Tim just said about this being connected and bring it together. So somehow I just read these guidelines I wrote for all the sound engineers for the 5 ensembles. And the first point was each recording should take place in a room suitable for classical chamber music. And this turned out to be, of course, a nice idea to have some kind of, that it sounds together, that we have some kind of maybe similar acoustic, something like that. But it turned out that, of course, this is impossible in this time, or that was impossible at that time. So it was clear, for example, in New York, they recorded the pieces in a living room, so far from a studio situation. And it's a bit funny to read it right now. So this wish somehow to bring it together as well, aesthetically, sound-wise, and then this impossibility. And then, of course, that brings completely new horizons or ideas sound-wise. So that makes it actually unique and interesting for me to have really completely different rooms and sources, so to speak.
Yeah, we come back to that later. Maybe Bas can tell us about how you felt about this specific situation of conducting. How did you approach the piece, the composition, and the recording situation?
Well, this was a very weird kind of nightmare. Because what people often think that conducting is that you make beats and then people play to those beats. But this is actually very, very far from the truth. You don't really, you always react on what you get, and you always play with what you get. And what is much more important is that the people who are forming the ensemble also react in a unified way. So they, it's not like you are just steering and everybody follows that individually and then at the end everybody's happy. No, they all so they react as a body, as one body, and not as all kinds of different elements. So to conduct this is actually impossible. I mean, it's just not doable, and it's really, really, really hard, maybe impossible, to have an idea of even a simple idea of tempo, of flow of the music. Of course, you have your image of what the music could be, and you. Lucky enough, I know Georg's music quite well, so I have quite a strong image of what the piece could be. But even then, to have real, sound in your hands is like. It's like, you make dough for a cake without actually having it. You don't know if it's ready until if the pasta is going to be any good if you don't try it. So this is more or less, this is really a nightmare. And it meant that I just sort of guessed what it was going to be, and I tried to. I mean, that's one thing. So half of my job was sort of guessing. And the other thing is that, of course, you have this piece that is also solo pieces. So in one hand, Georg thought about this piece, as giving people freedom. And the terrible thing that you have to do as a conductor is that you have to take part of this freedom away to make it sort of unified, which is a wonderful paradox, as many pieces by Georg have paradoxes, because it feels like you're free, but then in the end you're not really. Yeah. So it was a nice challenge to think about this, and I tried to, like Sebastian wrote, the conditions for the recordings. I wrote some sort of conditions for, in this place maybe we have a sort of similar spiccato, or we have a similar, legato kind of way, and I tried to encourage people to do lots of dynamic contrasts, which maybe if you play it as a solo piece, you wouldn't do it so contrasty, but if you play it as an ensemble piece, then it has to be more contrasty. So I tried to sort of envision or imagine how it would work. But then I had the incredible luck of having a post conductor in the person of Sebastian, who could eliminate all the tiny bits that were maybe not exactly together, or all the tiny bits even that were maybe not completely in tune, or because playing in tune, if you're not together, is it's not, as a concept, it doesn't exist. So actually that collaboration after, like the post-production bit, was actually also really interesting, and it made me sort of wish to have him there during every live performance. All the tiny mistakes that you can sort of, okay, maybe we put a little bit of mascara there, then it works. So that was it was at the beginning it was a nightmare. I think at the end it was quite an interesting dream.
So, and tell us how you made that technically. So what was the first moment like for you to sit alone in front of a camera without seeing musicians, without hearing anything? How did you manage that?
Well, that's the nightmare part. That is just impossible. So you try to think, okay, how is this, what is this tempo? How are you going to be, for example, for one fragment, composers write a quarter equals 50, whatever. But that doesn't mean anything until you hear what happens in the quarter equals 50, and maybe the quarter should be 48, or maybe it should be 52. And so I try to, even sort of sing sort of certain fragment for myself, and then decide, okay, this is probably going to be 52 or whatever. And then, to be honest, I decided to make a click track for myself. And then I did it with the click track, and I sort of tried to imagine, okay, is this going to work? And then we just made a very, very simple conducting video. I mean, the basics of conducting are terribly simple. Anybody can do this. So that it's just helpful for the musician. So I didn't try to show too much musicality, because that would just be nonsense if you're not together. I just tried to be sort of a nice, relaxed kind of metronome, where everybody could just fit their material inside, and also not to take too much freedom away. So that's how we try to do it. I have a friend who is a video, he's a composer actually, but he also does video productions for music, and we made a very sort of clean video to just structure the piece as quietly as possible, as easily as possible.
And so Serom and Tim, you both played your pieces. How did you feel about the special recording situation of the solo works, and then with this video conducting? How did this work out for you?
Well, my dream started not as a nightmare, because I already had Bass. I was not alone, and I really enjoyed it. Actually, it was a luxurious situation for me, because I didn't have a metronome. I actually had Bass in a small screen on my mobile phone most of the times. And I had my music, and I had Bass, and then he was always with me. And yeah, and I try to learn the piece, relearn the piece with this kind of structure, because when you learn a piece as a solo piece and with all the freedom that you have as a player, and usually you just get carried away, and then you allow yourself to take more time and to take more expression and to take whatever you need and want. But knowing that I'm a part of a bigger structure, and yeah, and he was giving me the indications and also suggestions, although I could feel that you were trying to be neutral and providing the information. But yeah, I could use that in a certain way to structure myself in a more disciplined way, and to understand the piece yeah, from a different point of view. And I really enjoyed it. It was really nice. And a new experience, of course, because you never have a little conductor conducting you, practicing a piece, you know, on your music stand.
And did you? When I was a kid and I had to practice with the metronome,
yeah,
I broke once a violin bow because I kicked the metronome. I didn't want to, and I was at whatever 9 years old, and I broke my bow because I.
No, I was treating you in a very, very nice way. You can.
Thank you.
You can believe me.
Tim, how did you?
We also love the idea of the bar numbers, right? That were
yeah, exactly.
in the top corner.
Yeah, that was a very smart idea of this composer friend. He said, you know, when you are playing and you don't look at, you know, you have no idea where you are, and you have 25 4/4 bars, and then, you know, you're away. So he said, in the top corner, we're going to always put you're now in bar 24 or whatever. And that was so smart, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a very good idea, and there's also life saving while we're recording, right?
Definitely, yeah. It's a very different way of preparing a piece, because usually, I mean, we are all musicians that are used to kind of put your actions, your movements, your in perspective or in relation to a movement of a conductor. So for me, it's much easier to feel the space between 1 and 2 and 3 if you really have someone moving. And so I think it was a nightmare for you, Bas. It was a very good idea of us to not take a metronome, even if we could. We also thought about kind of calculating a metronome, like very detailed, but still you have this bong, and you don't have anything in between. And I think this is so important to come from one point to the other in a very specific way. And even if you try to be very neutral, we could still feel that the music was kind of going through your head and your body and everything. So it was a completely, for us, it was a very good experience.
Mm.
Maybe from the post-production point of view, I think normally sometimes there are cases where it's a dream maybe to have all the sources separate, so that you can really, like a surgeon, take things out, rearrange, do all that you want without infecting all the other instruments. But of course, this is absolutely not the purpose of this music. And I totally agree with you, Tim, that it makes a huge difference just for the musicians to see bass conducting, of course. I was just thinking, because Seom, you said you had bass on your mobile. So, for example, when I did the recording in Musikfabrik, we had a bigger screen, and this as well, the perception of the conductor and where it stands in the room, how you perceive that. So it makes you really think about, you know, how to play, how to interact. I like that idea. So just this this thought.
And maybe, Sebastian, you can also tell us a bit more about, well, spatial sounds, which is the specialty at the hertz-labor at the ZKM. So you mix the solo voices not only in the relation to each other, but also in their spatial positions. What does that mean, or how does that work? What is tricky?
Yeah, the thing is, so for example, when Bas and I, when we changed ideas and had this conversation and worked on togetherness, presence, range of dynamics, and so on, we always did that in the idea of, let's say, having like a normal CD production or like a stereo mix, which works like for this medium, but of course this was not the aim or the purpose of this precise project for having this web-based interactive audio interface. So in the end, the files were mono and MP3, and so the experience for the listener and is completely different than, for example, if you're listening to your audio CD via 2 loudspeakers or a headphone. And in addition to that, like you mentioned, we did this this mix in the Klangdom, in the Kubus at ZKM, where we have like 50 plus loudspeakers. And there, of course, this is the dream. There you can really make use of all the files, the interaction between closed microphones and space, more room microphones. So that was really big fun to do, to really object-based mix the sounds, let them wander and fly through the room and so on. But of course, I was sitting there alone in this hall and enjoyed myself, and this is not the purpose either. So so these are the extremes of the thinking of the final medium. Actually, this is always something that you have to have in mind when you work on it. And of course, as a basic starting point, we needed to find some kind of thing that holds it together in form of like a stereo mix that was clear.
And then, Malte, the members of the Ensemble Resonanz came to you with this idea, and you thought they are crazy? Or how did you start to work on it?
I had thought that before, so it wasn't really that point. So no, I think for us as kind of the representatives of the, Sebastian, as you just called it, like the final medium. So the first thing that became very clear quickly was that the web is really a very limited medium for audio. And we learned that also through the groundwork that Dan Wilcox and Ludga Bruma at ZKM did, where we realized, okay, so the libraries and the technological underpinnings of the web don't really lend themselves well to anything but highly compressed audio that is delivered as efficiently as possible. So what we did here, or what the whole piece in its essence entailed, was already pushing the limits of what's technologically possible in the web. And that's, I think, one of the things that immediately captured like our interest, because pushing the limits of the web and also exposing the principles of its creation. So whoever built this seemed to be of the opinion that like one audio track or 2 audio tracks must be enough for anyone, right? So who would do something like this? And that became pretty clear quickly. And that was one of the points where we got interested, because we really like to stretch the possibilities of the medium, because we think then it becomes interesting and it has a chance to become And I think in a way, like going back to the situation, was seen as the only way out for many of us to connect. And it was done in very pragmatic ways in calls like this for business meetings and stuff. And at WAF, we always had thought that the web has a greater poetic potential. And I think that was the first thing that came to our minds when Ensemble Resonanz approached us, that here's a chance to do something poetic with a medium that is usually not perceived as a very suitable medium for things like that.
Hmm. And when you think about user experience with this piece of Georg Friedrich Haas, what kind of aesthetic and emotional factors play a role for you, or what guides you in the visual design for this?
Yeah, I think there was the other very interesting part of this, because it also became clear that, or it's evident that this piece is about audio, and it's about the spatial arrangement of audio. That's at the core of the freedom that Georg Friedrich Haas describes in the title. So that connected within a thing that we also really liked as a visual design studio, to do something that is decidedly unvisual, or that is not centered about the visual interface, because most of our interfaces are visual. Like everything we use every day are visual interfaces, and they are optimized to be understood really quickly and be grasped with one, just by viewing them or seeing them. And that was the challenge here, was to build something where the visual becomes less important than the auditive part, because it is a piece that needs to be listened to closely, especially under the circumstances of the web. So when we designed it visually, I think the goal was to create something that gives you enough information to understand what's going on in the piece, because it can get really complicated if you have all the voices playing at the same time. So it needs some way of orienting the user visually, but at the same time, it cannot become the point of focus. So that was the goal, and that's why the look of the platform is rather subdued and very very quiet, and it's us trying to give the piece, or the auditive qualities of the piece and the interaction with it, the higher importance in the way you interact with it.
Mm-hmm. I think one question is for all of you. So what's, or maybe we first look on the app, or maybe Malte, you can show us a little bit of, or give us a tour of this app and show us what we can do there and how. And then you all should answer the questions. What do you think can be newly discovered with this, about the work of Georg Friedrich Haas with this digital audio interface? And what opportunities or challenges do you see in this for a new audience experience, I think? But maybe it's better
so
see a little bit how it looks like, or how it works.
Yeah, and I think, Sarum, I think I need your help to explain what is actually happening in the piece, while I try to, and maybe I can then try to explain how it is the piece, and then maybe you can say something about what's happening musically.
I'll try.
So maybe I should mention that.
I think one question is for all of you. So what's, or maybe we first look on the app, or maybe Malte, you can show us a little bit of, or give us a tour of this app and show us what we can do there and how. And then you all should answer the questions. What do you think can be newly discovered with this, about the work of Georg Friedrich Haas with this digital audio interface? And what opportunities or challenges do you see in this and this for a new audience experience, I think. But maybe it's better
so
see a little bit how it looks like or how it works.
Yeah, and I think, Sarum, I think I need your help to explain what is actually happening in the piece, while I try to, and maybe I can then try to explain how it is the piece, and then maybe you can say something about what's happening musically.
I'll try.
So maybe I should mention that you will not be able to hear this, and it's very subtly to see, but so what I did now is I just activated one of the voices, right? So that's the trumpet played by Marco Blau, and so I put it onto the map, basically. And I can then move it around, and it creates a kind of a trail for its audio, so it visualizes the sound it makes. And I'm able to navigate through all the very diverse cast of people that had a part in the production of this piece, and I can add them. So I can maybe add you, Sarum. So I put you onto the map, and you become the second element that is now in this universe of sound, basically. And of course, with every added voice, my listening experience changes. It becomes more complex, and at the same time, it adds a level of interface complexity, because it adds another thing I have to deal with and another thing that I have to orient in the space. And the placement of the voices actually changes the sound. So what the app does is it reflects the spatial configuration of the voices that are in the piece and relates them to where I am. So the user basically takes the center spot always. So you're always in the center of the circle, while you arrange the voices around you. And the further away you move them, the more quiet they become, and the closer together you move them, the more they mix and intermingle and become louder. So what you basically do is you do a very simplified version of what Sebastian was able to do in the Klangdom at ZKM, but every user can do it for themselves. And maybe a question, all of you, because throughout the whole process, I was really curious how this would relate to a physical staging of this piece. Like so what we're doing here is, of course, a digital representation, but how would this relate to a physical staging of the piece that might have happened if the COVID situation wouldn't have gone the way it went?
Well, I mean, you'd never have had this kind of opportunity that you, while they play, while we play, that you move the musicians around you, and also the mixture of sound and mixture of distances, and all those things that we can do here. I mean, it's actually impossible to realize in the real life. So, I mean, even for me, it's very, very interesting to think about all the possibilities that you have. And I, of course, didn't try like all the possibilities we have, because I think it's impossible that you can spend like every day and many hours on that. But yeah, I think one should try it.
Yeah,
but
we should mention that this is now publicly available.
Yeah, it's actually hard to explain, you know, the experience of experiencing the sound. So maybe everybody should go and try.
Yeah, and it's publicly available at einklangfreierwesen.de.
From now on. That's the
maybe you could also give a little tour to the settings, how do we call them?
The presets.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because it kind of also adds more possibilities that also Georg Friedrich Haas already thought of in this special arrangement that he did for trios or two percussionists, and you can also experience this here, and you have a very nice ensemble mix done by Sebastian and Bas Vigas. So you have some starting points also that you could develop on your own.
Yeah, that's true. It's also there to, I think, as a suggestion where to start. And it's of course not. I really like about it that there's no definitive version of it. There's just every time you use it, and these are best configured ensemble or for pairs or for trios, for different configurations that can be loaded and then automatically but they could of course also be modified. So as a user, I could also interfere with what Bas and Sebastian did.
And Bas, why did you choose this this ensemble situation? So the position of the instruments.
Actually, that was more Sebastian's suggestion, because I was going in my mind, of course, as an ensemble conductor, I was going more for a sort of traditional setup, and then Sebastian said, the situation, on the platform is very different. So maybe Sebastian should answer that question, because I think in the constellation there, he overruled me with very good reasons.
For especially this thing, I have here maybe you can see that, just a rough drawing from Tobias, and so this might be one way to put it in the room, for example, and there are of course several others. So this is just one way to present it all.
How do you like the result, actually? Have we talked about that? Bas, Sebastian, Tim, do you use it?
I mean, if I can start, I think it's a very interesting way to reuse this material, because it's so full of paradoxes. The more you think about it, Einklang, freier Wesen, so first of all, you're supposed to be free. Then the composer actually gave you notes, so you're not free at all. And then you're supposed to do this Einklang. You have to sort of reach an agreement. So, what is free and when are you limited? And, freedom is only possible in relation to other people. So I can be, free when I'm really alone. Sarah really described that very well, that she played it as a soloist, and now she felt like she had to sort of relearn it because it has to sort of fit in a society, in a micro society. So your freedom is limited. And it gets even worse, because now not only are you controlled by, a composer and a conductor and, your other colleagues, but now you're even controlled by the people at home who can switch you off and on. That is really fascinating. And they can sort of create their own version of this weird paradox. So I think it's a mess, but it's a very, very interesting mess, and it can be really beautiful.
Yeah, for me.
Sorry, Saron, please.
I think one thing that came to my mind when this was
Wait, we have a problem.
Speaking, I think Malte has a bad internet connection. He's frozen. Malte?
Oh.
I can hear you. I'm here.
Oh, he's back.
Sorry.
Okay, so say again what you wanted to say.
So,
Maybe Malte, stop sharing the screen because it's eating up your internet.
probably.
Yeah.
Probably. We'll just do that.
Yeah, I think it's better.
Yeah. Okay. So I was just about to say that one thing or one question that came to our minds when this was nearing completion was also the question about what is the format to publish like this, right? Because it's kind of like a dynamic format. It's not the definitive format pressed to a CD, but it's more like a format mains and that are really interesting about how to present music in the digital space.
Yeah, I didn't get everything, but the dynamic. But Serum, you wanted to add something? And Sebastian?
Yeah, because you asked how we like the result. Well, for me, on a psychological level, we live now a year in this time of pandemic, and well, I'm an ensemble player, and I always play with my colleagues together, and I rarely play alone. And although this was a project where I participated as a solo player in that sense, but I never felt really incomplete. You know what I mean? It's I somehow felt complete as a one person point of view, and but still I'm being a part of a bigger structure, and that was kind of a consolation as well, because you have the feeling you are isolated and you are incomplete, and you are just a part of something really, really big, and you don't know what's going on, and then you somehow lose the connection to the outside world as well, a little bit, as a musician, as a person. So yeah, on that level of my psychology, I felt kind of safe seeing like everybody in their living room, in their space, they created something, and everyone can feel safe as a one person being, as a musician, but still be part of something that we are connected, and then we can kind of communicate, although it felt a little bit like having imaginary friends, but still we communicated, and yeah, and everybody can put us together in different connections and in different sizes and different combinations. So yeah, we're going to make it, I guess. So for me, there's a consolation. I liked it.
Maybe one thought of from my side. What I think is really fascinating about this result is this idea of that you take an ensemble, a position of musicians in a room, an acoustic that is there. You take that for granted. You get one situation, that's it. So that's the normal circumstances, and this is completely broken. This concept here, and I think this is really fascinating. And Malte, when you pull the musicians now on the app, I think I was thinking about the listening experience. I think it's really important as well to change something, but then really to take your time and listen to what just happened, because especially this music needs, of course, time to listen. and experience the changes. I think this could be one of the most interesting parts of the experience. So I like that idea. And maybe for me, this is kind of a beginning of something that could be, of course, improved. For example, when I first thought about it, I had in mind to really have, like, for every musician, like a close setup, that you have very precise close sound and a very far sound, so that you have those two extremes. And of course, this was not really possible with the limitations the web has, meaning you would have not 10 tracks, but 40 tracks. But I think in the future, this can be really interesting, and to see how perceiving different rooms at the same time. So this is a thing to further explore, I think.
Bas, you wanted to add something? You arouse your...
I thought of something and then I thought, no, never mind. But anyway, now it's too late, because I once conducted, I had to think about it because Sebastian started talking about it. I once conducted Beethoven's Fifth Symphony in a setting where the whole orchestra was spread out all over the room. And a friend of mine came to that concert, and the audience could sit in between all the musicians. So playing together was a nightmare. This was before COVID, but the orchestra was like spread out all. And a friend of mine came to the concert, and she sat next to the piccolo. And for the whole piece, she was like, well, "Why are you? What is this person doing here?" Because nothing was going on. And then towards the end of the last movement, finally, she knew why there was a piccolo in Beethoven 5, and and it completely changed her outlook on this piece that we know way too well. But it's somehow it reminded me of that situation when you have the luxury to get to know a piece like from a completely different perspective, and that especially when these developments online, because this feels like it's just the beginning of what could be possible online. The developments that we might be facing in this online presence of music are making this incredibly interesting, I think. So in that sense, this feels like the start of something that is dangerously vast.
Yeah. Well, I think we are almost ready with our time. Does anybody want to add something? Otherwise, I would say that everyone should visit the app on einklangfreierwesen.de and look at it, try it out. And thank you all for being part of this project and for contributing so many precious things and points of views. And the complete composition, well, we could not hear so much now, but the complete composition will be performed at the very end of this event. So we are excited. And I think now we continue with the keynote speech of Georg Friedrich Haas on Einklang freier Wesen and aus freier Lust verbunden. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello and good morning for me. I don't know which time it will be for you. Thank you for sharing your time. Thank you for offering your time. The good luck is we are doing this online. That, of course, if you want to get a coffee or you want to read your messages which you got on Facebook in this time. You can do it and nobody will disturb you. This is one of the huge qualities which the new online society gives us as a side effect of the beautiful new telesociety. We are now speaking about my piece Einklang, freier Wesen, with the second title Aus freier Lust verbunden. First, I want to say I was really surprised and proud that Tobias Rempe and his ensemble decided to make this beautiful project about my piece. It's a very old piece. I composed it 27 years ago. And for a composer, this is really a situation of a huge honor that such an old piece gets a new kind of importance within a new surrounding. So what I did in this piece was I was not conscious that what I did was a kind of a very new way to understand the identity of a work. I composed a piece for 10 instruments, and I also wanted that each part of these 10 instruments can be performed as a solo instrument piece. And now is the question. I was asked very often, well, Georg, is this an ensemble piece where you can play the parts as well as solo pieces? Or are these 10 solo pieces which you can play together? And I never could give an answer to this, because it's both. And this work is a work which has a kind of double identity, or in this case, better to say, of 11 identities, the 10 identities of the solo pieces and the one identity when all played together. And I also found that some of the combination of these instruments create a chamber music which I really liked, and some not. The others had some beautiful moments, but there were also moments where it did not really work. And therefore, I could only allow or make it possible for a very few number of chamber pieces to be performed. Now, I was asked, what do you think about the idea to allow a version of this piece where the listener is able to decide which combinations they want to listen to? And I thought, well, that's a solution. If it sounds bad, I don't have to do anything. The listener just will change the instrumentation by themselves, and they can enjoy these beautiful parts, which I could not present because in a concert situation I would have to pay with the not so beautiful parts to make it possible to hear the beautiful parts. And now the persons, everybody is free to decide what they want to hear. The title of the piece, when all instruments are playing, is Einklang, freier Wesen. It's one of these sentences which are very hard to translate from German. You know, this gravity of the German language. Einklang is unison, but it's not only unison, it's also a kind of a spiritual connection. And Wesen is being, but it's also the souls, the connection of souls. It's a very deep sentence, and it's also a quote of a very important German author, a quote of Friedrich Hölderlin. So we could translate Einklang, freier Wesen with unit of free beings, but I don't feel very well with this translation, because this also spiritual background of this unity is lost in this translation. And it's the same is with the title of the solo pieces, Aus freier Lust verbunden, connected by free lust, or by free desire. And we have the same problem. The word Lust in German is so multiple, has so many meanings, which range from just the fun to do something, first the wish to do something, to spiritual fun, spiritual engagement, up to erotic and sexual feelings. And this connected by the freedom of this lust is something which is very intense. And I also understood all these individual music instruments as individuums which are connected to another only because they are free and because every one of them does what they want. It's interesting that the word frei, free, freedom, in both titles is substantial. And I would allow myself to tell something about my personal development. As a composer, when I was young or younger, I did not really trust the free intuition. I tried to find logical systems, mathematical systems, which guarantee for me that the work has its substantial inner connections. And I did a lot of work with finding, for example, finding mathematical procedures to create a very organic acceleration or a very organic getting slower, or to get this motion of a vibration about the center going up and down, and to transform the function of sine waves into the pitch, into the time and all this. And when I started to compose this piece, of course, I was looking for mathematical structures who could help me to do that, but I found I cannot. My knowledge in mathematics was too poor to solve this problem. Therefore, I had only one chance to become free. And I composed in a very simple, technical, very simple way. I constructed harmonical situations and allowed each instrument to move freely within these complex harmonic situations. For me, in my personal history, this piece was a key point. I discovered freedom. And after this, I have changed my technique of compositions. And until now, I can say that, this being focused on freedom, which I started in this piece, is something which is now a central thing of all my musical work. And it was, as I said, for me fascinating. Yeah, well, this should also, sorry, I also should explain that the political aspect of this piece, which was very important, to write a group of pieces where an ensemble is possible, where each of the members of these ensembles are doing their life in freedom. This seemed for me to be a kind of a ritual for a utopic society, which I am dreaming of. But frankly, if all this freedom is reduced to the possibility to move free within one harmony, I think it's musically it works. It's also, but politically, I think it's a little bit suspicious. And I felt, in some sense, I failed with this piece. I failed in two senses. One, that it still was not possible that each combination of instruments will work. And the second, even more important, is this structural idea that everything is reduced to one harmony. And I planned to write this piece later in my life. And I started it maybe 2 years ago with a new project, and I called these pieces Blumenwiese. And then I found I'm still not able to do it. Even these, it's a beautiful pieces in the same way as I believe that Einklang, Wesen and verbunden are beautiful pieces which I love and I'm happy that they are performed. But this political idea did not work in the others as well. And I hope, I'm now 67, I hope within the next 20 years I will be able to do it, because maybe if I cannot do it, then it might be too late. But this is one of the things which I want to finish in my life. You understand, this is a piece which is very, very important for me personally in many matters. And when I was asked if I would agree with this project, I said, of course, great. I will do everything to make it possible. And I also felt this as a kind of solidarity with the performers. Because one of the terrible things of the pandemic is that musicians who perform instruments lose their connection to the audience. And all must be conscious that to be a good performer also needs not daily, but weekly and monthly challenge to stay in front of an audience and to feel this interaction between the sounds they produce and the way these sounds are perceived, and to find a possibility which makes sense for them. This made me very, very happy, and I supported it. And I have to tell it's a small detail, this thing is not a business for me, because my publisher, Universal Edition in Vienna, only agreed to this project if my part of the royalties is 0%, and I love that this was possible, and I'm happy to support it. And maybe you will understand that I was a little bit concerned or even annoyed when I perceived that this piece was used in a symposium about the future of telesociety. Because this is not what I believe in. Of course, in each disaster, there are some people who are the winners. If there's an earthquake, it's a very good time after the earthquake for construction companies. And this COVID-19 is a very good time for, let's say, companies who sell online shopping, or companies who sell disinfectors. But I think art is something different. And I believe today, when I see what really happens with this, I am deeply sad about the way how society handles this pandemic. We see our society is controlled by old men, some old women. And old men have I'm an old man too, I'm not really touched by the pandemic. I had my life. I have enjoyed a lot of things in my life, and now if I have 2 years where I can just be focused in my room, it's fine. But what is this for a young family? What is this for a student? Think on my students who lose 1 or 2 years of their life. And I remember how important these years have been for me. What is this for the even younger generation, the teenagers who develop their personality, who discover their bodies? I imagine young people who give the first kiss in their life on a screen. What does this mean for their lives? How much pain is in this? And I'm really angry that society does not take care of this, because it's this society which is controlled by old people who don't need all this anymore. Yeah? They forget the pain and the suffering of these younger generations, and they also forget the pain and the suffering of the artists who are used, especially musical artists, who are used to communicate with the audience. Of course, the possibilities of computer art, of online art, is amazing. It's wonderful. Of course, there will be done a lot, and there will be done amazing and good art with this. But I just want to tell one small detail. There exists one element in art, in popular art, which is completely done electronically. It's the popular music. And look how important live concerts are for them. As my wife is really in love with Prince, and she has all these recordings of him. But when she had the possibility to hear a live concert with Prince, she had it once in her life, she's still speaking about this today. And we must be conscious that this energy, that this quality is something that we have to fight for. And I would add one thing, for me as a person, as a composer, I understand it as a part of my resistance against this dictatorship of, let's say, of YouTube. The dictatorship of reducing music to the soundtrack, which we can easily communicate electronically. That the resistance against this is an absolute necessity. And for example, when I compose music which has to be performed in complete darkness, And you go into this performance, you listen to it, and it's completely dark, you don't see anything. And you have your inner fears, you don't really know. You have to trust that the person beside you will neither rob you, kill you, or rape you, because you know we live in a culture where this will not happen. But there are some moments in your personality which are afraid of it. And you also feel how the musicians, which are desperately thrown into their own identity, have no conductor who can help them. They have no possibility to give an entering sign. Okay, let's continue here. Just are left, and this desperation, this energy, no virtual reality can give you this. And I think it's my duty as an artist to write art which protests against this reduction to the art, to those elements we can hear, we can see, maybe in future also we can smell, maybe even feel, even taste. I don't know how this will work, but this spiritual energy, if a group of human beings is together, either to listen to Schubert or to Bach, or to do a religious ceremony, or to stand in a museum in front of the paintings and see this painting where you know the hand of the artist has been in connection with it. No perfectly done reproduction of the visual impression can give you this. And we have to keep that, because this is part of the humanity.
Ladies and gentlemen, today we will discuss how much the cultural milieu has been changed by the corona crisis. And I would like to present you some hypotheses and some theories. What is the real fundamental change or continuation of the actual state of our society, the actual state of culture in our society. First of all, I would like to discuss what does it mean, sensual sensory experience. Because people always complain in the mass media and even in culture that now it's a digital age. They don't even know what does it mean, digital age. I would like to explain it later. They would say now, when we communicate like here, online, when we communicate online with electromagnetic waves, this was people more or less understand under digital age, when the communication is transported by images, by words, like a classical culture, or etc. I would like to explain first why it is such a nonsense to say the digital is missing and a loss of sensual sensory experience. We have to remember that the word sensual or sensory comes from sensory organs. And we have about 5 principal sensory organs. We have the eye, we have the ear, we have the nose, we have the tongue, and we have fingers. So vision is a sensory experience done with a sensory organ with the eye. To hear, like music, is an effect of the sensory organs, the ear. Then we have smell with the nose. And this means these three sensory organs have the capacity that we can hear something, that we can smell something, that we can see something which is distant, which is far away. So therefore we call these sensory organs, we call them organs of distance, or in Latin or in Greek, the word far means tele. Yeah? So we can say eye and ear and nose are tele-sensory organs. Then we have organs of proximity. Yeah? This is the touch with fingers, and this is the taste with the tongue. So now you see, we have already a minority of haptic experiences, and we have a majority all the time of distances, distance and telesensory organs. And when you think about culture, and we agree that writing and pictures have been the beginning of culture, then we see that writing is already not only the primary medium, the source medium of all other media, writing is also a medium of distance. Because with letters, you write down something which is not here. You write a letter to somebody who is not here. If he would be in front of you, would you just speak with him? Writing, that means using the medium of writing, is already a medium of distance. For example, we can say, when we speak now, this is a continuous stream of sounds. Then we've invented notes. We have not only invented notes for sounds in music, we've invented notes for the sounds of speaking. So the letters, what we use in writing, are the notes of sounds which comes out from our mouth. Okay, but when we just speak like now, it will disappear. So we have invented a system of storage. Writing is the first system of storage. With the notes of sound on paper or on wood, on stone, whatever, we can fix a kind of memory and storage. And then we can discover this memory, this storage, hundreds of years later, and can then say, this happened at a time which doesn't exist now, and this happened at a place which doesn't exist now. So we have to understand, writing is the first medium of absence. It is the first medium of tele. It's the first telemedium. Therefore, now today we have a lot of other technologies with the word tele. We have television. We can see far with television machines. We have telefax. We have telephone. So we can even hear more than our ear. So our ear and our eye are already sense organs of distance of tele. But now we've invented machines who can see farther and hear farther than our sensory organs. So we can say our technology, which we call tele-technology, technology of distance, telefax, telephone, television, internet, radio, is just to continue the labor of writing. This is easy to understand if people would like to think. Medium, as the first medium of distance and first telemedium is writing. It's a medium of absence about things and persons and events which are not here. And then technology, especially teletechnology, is just to continue the labor of writing. And writing and teletechnology is just a continuation of our sensory organs of distance. So I have to say, our culture is not built on haptic and tactile experience. Music, images of painting, literature, etc., is all built on the sensory organs of distance. Therefore, to say the digital is not a sensory experience is complete nonsense. And we have to understand why. I hope that you can understand, we can agree. What does it mean to live with and beyond sensory organs of distance, tele organs? Then comes the next important step in the middle of 19th century. Up to the middle of 19th century, when you had a message, when you wanted to communicate, we had been confined in a room. Even when we had eyes and ears and letters, when you have been reading a book, then you didn't need the author. But when you wanted to hear music, even when you were 100 meters away, you needed musicians. When you looked at the picture, you did not need the painter. So here we have a kind of culture of tele experience. But now, in the middle of the 19th century, there was the strongest division for the next 200 years. With the invention of electromagnetic waves, with the real invention of electromagnetic waves and the discovery of other forms of waves, the first time in the history of mankind, we could separate the message from the messenger. Up to then, when you wanted to communicate with a letter or another message, you needed a body, be it a pigeon, be it a ship, be it a machine, was it a person. You needed a person or a machine of transportation of the message. But then suddenly, with telecommunication on magnetic waves, telephone, telefax, television, you could send a message without the body of a messenger. That means the message, a chain of signs, a chain of codes, or chain of letters, of signals, let's say of data, could be communicated without the presence of the bodies. Naturally, the source of the message was about in one place, and the source of the reception was about in another place. But the communication, the transportation, did not need a body. But before 19th century, it was always necessary that the communication and the transportation needed the body of a messenger. And this is now the fundamental axiom. We have invented the technology, television, telephone, internet, computers, radio, etc., that we can now communicate with only data, digital data, only with messages, only messenger. So the separation between message and messenger is a fundamental axiom of our society. Now, with the Corona crisis, suddenly we could not meet anymore in a room. We had to keep distance. Wonderful, wonderful. That means suddenly we became aware that since a long time we don't exist anymore in the society of proximity. All culture and all communications in 150 years is built on sensory organs and technology of sensory organs. So teletechnology just continues the labor of writing, and teletechnology is continue of our sensory organs of distance. So technology would not develop further senses of proximity. We have no machines for taste, and we have no machines for touch. But now comes the point. Even the sphere of touch is what we call sexuality and erotic. So sexuality and erotic is the agglutination of two bodies. And now we have learned you can make communication without bodies. Now we have learned that even in the erotic sphere, people can have an orgasm by listening to somebody or just watching pornographic movies. Even here, it's the most exclusive sphere. It's the most exclusive terrain. It's the most exclusive domain of the sensory organs of proximity. We realize people don't need any more proximity. They have the same sensual experience by watching other bodies or listening to other bodies. So we can see what happened is a complete triumph of the sensory organs of distance, supported by the technology of distance, by teletechnology. And now, with the Corona crisis, this became aware because we have developed in the last 100 years a terrible mass culture with a fiction that we need proximity, even when all culture was built not on proximity. We just pretended we need proximity. So we have built stadiums, terrible stadiums. We have built concert halls, gigantic concert halls. We have built football, soccer stadiums, etc. These are just, in my opinion, reactionary business models. Because what kind of comfort do you have to be with 50,000 people close to each other with a bad sound? And now comes the point. This kind of experience of mass experience, which in fact is already from the beginning against culture, because culture is always an individual experience. An individual writes a poet, an individual writes music. Then we have a collective, maybe several people, who makes the music, 20, maybe 50 people. No? But then the experience of a book, the experience of a painting, the experience of a poem, the experience of film is again, or looking at an artwork is again individual experience. Artist has an individual source and has an individual reception. So to bring art in the sphere of mass communication is already a crime against art. It is a business model. And how was it possible? It was possible because when you have a guitar which is unplugged, can reach maybe 100 people in a small room. And therefore, we've invented, in the 50s, we have invented amplifiers and resistors. And now, suddenly, with amplifiers and resistors, the sound of a guitar can reach 50,000 and 100,000 people. So again here, we see the triumph of teletechnology to reach the masses. We have invented not only instruments, we've invented additional instruments to support instruments, to turn an instrument of proximity, like the guitar. 100 years a guitar was just played in small groups. And now we've invented a technology that the instrument of proximity can turn into an instrument of distance. Now suddenly we have with amplifiers, it's transistors, we can make music and sound, etc., for hundreds and thousands of people. So you see again, technology could not evolve and develop further senses of proximity, like nose and taste. Nose could be developed, but not fingers and not tongue. So our society has become more and more a telesociety. And suddenly, with the corona crisis, we can realize it. There's a nice incident to support my thesis. That the new vaccine, the hope of technology of how we can beat the infection with a vaccine is called mRNA. M is the word for messenger. We can learn that what we do now, even on the level of moleculars, we introduce the separation between messenger and message. This is the next thing which people don't understand. When you are in the classical world, as I said, for a message, you need a messenger. And in Germany, we call it a Briefträger. That means there's a person who takes a letter from one station and brings it to another letter. So the man who transports a letter is the messenger. And the message is a letter. And now today, with the virus, we are just in the same situation. There's a bad message, which is a virus. But the virus cannot be transported by itself. The virus, the message, needs a messenger. And we, our human bodies, we are the messengers. So this is ridiculous what people say today. They always say, everybody says, stupidly enough, the virus does not know a border. For sure, the virus knows a border. The border is 1 or 2 meters. Therefore, we have to keep social distances. Therefore, we have to stay at home and not to move, because it's not the virus which distributes himself. We distribute the virus. We are the messenger of a bad message. Therefore, we have to stay at home, not to have what is called contact, where we have this obligation of social distancing, to keep distance. You see precisely, the virus makes clear that we are living in a society of distance, what I call telesociety. So what will come in the next decades? We have to learn to forget the illusion about proximity, because there's 150 years already, we have this separation between message and messenger. Since 150 years, we already have developed a very strong telecommunication, teletechnology. Fortunately, because if we would not have this teletechnology, we could not communicate at all. Now we can telephone. Now we can see each other. So we're using our sensory organs of telecommunication. We're using our technology of telecommunication. And this is all a sensory experience. To see something, to hear something, to smell something is a sensual experience. Therefore, to say the digital experience is not a sensual experience is complete nonsense. No? Because to see something, to hear something is a sensual experience. So, and it's not necessary to be in a concert hall. You can sit at home, you can listen to the record, you can listen to a tape, you can watch a movie at home. No? So we have to conclude to say, what I see, what I smell, what I hear is an experience of distance, a telecommunicative effect. And now we are moving more and more into a telesociety, forgetting the laws of proximity. And the digital technology, what we have available today, will help us to move forward into the society, what I call telesociety. And the best point you can imagine is, for example, to make a difference, when you had a soccer game, you had 50,000 people, what I call local audience. In concert halls, in theater, we have local audiences. But in fact, the money did not come from the local audiences. The money for soccer games came from the people in front of television. And now you see the stupid people, when there are no local audience in the stadium, they speak about ghost games. The people in front of television are not ghosts. So in the stadium, you have 50,000 people, but in front of television, you have millions of people. These people are not ghosts. These people are, correctly speaking, a non-local audience. So what the idea is now, the local audience in art, in culture, in business, in rock, in sports will lose its importance. As a non-local audience, which is not a ghost audience, which is a real body in front of television, the non-local audience consisting of individuals, they will not sit 50,000 people in front of the television. So non-local audience is a mass audience, but consisting of individuals. Everybody is watching it alone with some friends in front of the television. So what they're moving forward is to a non-local audience, which will have a very sensory experience, hearing and listening. What we're losing is a locally bound masses. And this is something good.
Good evening. I'm glad to have the possibility to talk on this panel with guests that is my impression, have very different approaches to our subject, very diverse backgrounds. The title of our panel is Aus freier Lust verbunden, Opportunities and Challenges of Digital Music Experiences. The German title, Aus freier Lust verbunden, I think Georg Friedrich Haas just tried to translate it. It's now I'm just sorry, I have a technical problem. I listened to me 1 minute ago. Is there a delay?
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know. After the speeches by Georg Friedrich Haas and Peter Weibel, I think there is a need for a discussion about the telesociety, but also about the challenges of maybe and the possibilities and limitations of new medias and new formats which allow to experience music, including the possibility to escape from social and cultural bubbles, which is also the case with our, I hope, quite diverse bubble of 5 speakers today. So I would like to present you, and please give a sign when I talk about you. There's in alphabetical order Sandeep Bhagwati, composer, researcher, teacher, co-founder of Ensemble Extracte and ensemble director, who says local concerts at a given time are called into question even if they are online. There is Theresa Bayer, journalist, team member of the web platform Norient. And this is an audio-visual gallery and community of practice for the sound of the world. For recent radio broadcasts, she experimented quite a lot with a lot of online performances, formats, and of contemporary music. Then there's Ludga Bruma. He is the head of the hertz-labor at ZKM, of the Center of Concept Medium in Karlsruhe, and he's professor for composition for digital media at the Conservatory of Trossingen. And welcome to Gina Emerson. She's a scientific researcher living in Berlin with a focus on audience research in the context of contemporary classical music. One of her subjects are audience experiences in the digital realm compared to performances of music formats in the live or analog world. We will talk about this later. And then we have Barbara Lüneburg. She is violinist. She's professor for artistic research at the Bruckner Universität in Linz, and she wrote a book about the possibilities of participation of the public with digital means, which is one of maybe not restrictions, but new possibilities of digital music experiences. And to start with, I would like to pick 2 statements of the speeches we just heard. Peter Weibel said, "It's nonsense to say that we lose sensual experience in digital communication." Georg Friedrich Haas underlined that he does not believe in telesociety. He said, "COVID is a good time for composers who sell online. Art is something different." And I would like to start with the question to Theresa Bayer. Did you have a moment in the last month of the pandemic where you thought that you were just happier or aesthetically more satisfied in a digital format than in a real concert?
To be honest, I stopped comparing the digital formats to the real life experience, because I think it's unfair. We have to consider the digital format as something, on its own right. And I think it's also frustrating to just compare to the real concert format. So I can say I miss it really much. I miss it a lot, and I can't wait when the pandemic is over to go to a concert and enjoy being, at the place where it happens. But I didn't have an experience where I thought, okay, that would have been better live. No.
Mm-hmm. Peter Weibel was also saying that he is considering live concerts with a mass public is out of date. And Sandeep Bhagwati, you wrote me in an email before that you're aware that there is need for a change in the concert practice, maybe as local concerts. What do you mean by this?
Well, I can answer with a story. I have a student, one of my more talented students in Montreal, and I have students who do all kinds of music things, singer-songwriters, indie music producers, and so on. But he was really into contemporary, Western, Eurological art music. And he knew a lot about it. All his pieces were kind of reflections on famous pieces of that genre. And every year for the opening of the new music season, there's a free concert by the Société de Musique Contemporaine de Montréal, de Quebec. And I go there with my class, so as an assignment. And they have to write about it. And he wrote that he couldn't concentrate on the music because he had never listened to this music in a concert setting. He grew up in the countryside. He had YouTube and he had recordings, and he listened to that music silently at home, lying on his carpet. And he was totally disturbed by the fact that people around him were breathing, coughing, shuffling, sending erotic signals, and so on. He felt that was a horrible distraction. And I thought at the time, this was 5 years ago, I found this very weird. And now suddenly we live in this exact situation where we only listen to music like that. And I think there was already in the form of the concert, in the way that we organized concerts, in the way that we thought about making concerts, there was a problem between advanced music forms who were immersive, who liked different spaces, who liked different localities, and the traditional selling format of the concert, which is a kind of commercial format. And I think Peter Weibel has highlighted this as I don't share his dislike of the masses so much, but I do understand that just because there's a commercial format that has been established, it's not necessarily the only format for music. And my first step when the pandemic hit was to write music for all those musicians I knew who would now be sitting at home and have no audience. And I thought it's very wonderful because for example, in Indian tradition, the best music is made when you do it alone. In India, they say for God, and not for an audience. So the concept that music is always for an audience is already a problem. And maybe we get pushed by these kind of situations into new ways of thinking about what music is made for, how it is made, and what it is, which contexts are possible for musicking.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to ask Gina Emerson, you did a lot of research about concert public. What are the expectations, or can you say what the expectations of a public is towards a concert when they go to a contemporary music concert in Spatial?
Yeah, thank you. So I, in my research for my doctoral thesis, I conducted surveys at 12 contemporary art music events in 10 different countries in Europe. That was a collaboration with the Ulysses Network for Contemporary Music. And yeah, I found out a lot about how audiences approach the concert situation, how they prepare themselves for a live event, and how so much of what is important about the concert experience actually often has quite little to do with the music itself, or has, especially for those who are perhaps newcomers to contemporary art music or have less familiarity with this genre. It's often the idea that they're attending with someone else, they're making a social experience out of it. There's some kind of form of perhaps spontaneity to the to attendance, or they're looking maybe for, a kind of emotional connection or some kind of connection to the performers or to others through attendance. And for me, coming from this kind of area of music sociology, music psychology, and from audience research,
I think it's particularly important to look at how those kinds of aspects of the audience experience could translate successfully into a digital musical experience. And to kind of already pick up a little bit on what Sandeep was saying, I think in music, we have actually kind of under-researched and under-theorized what the role of the audience is, or what it is actually there for in contemporary music culture. And I think this is something that stands very much in contrast to something like theatre and theatre studies, where the role of the audience and the idea that the work is somehow completed in that moment of it being received by an audience is something that's just so central to thought around theatre in the 20th century. Whereas in contrast, we kind of, in the music world, have a bit of an obsession with this idea of the individualized listener, that kind of abstracted figure that somehow is kind of ideally receiving a work from the composer. And the idea of the audience, however, is actually, or the live audience, is much messier, much more complicated. They're bringing many other factors into that experience. And so I see, on the one hand, a huge amount of, and I think audiences, and it's coming out in my research too, that audiences do see a lot of kind of potential in digital formats. And there's definitely many ways to make them rich, immersive musical experiences that go way beyond the traditional concert format. And I think that's important that they do. But on the other hand, we need to see how these kinds of very important live, local, analog features of the musical experience, how these could translate into digital context successfully.
Anybody wants to react to Gina Emerson, or should I? I just would like to ask you, Barbara Lüneburg, you did a research about the interaction, also the digital possibilities of interaction of the public with musical works. So this is also a question not only of technique, but also of the format of the piece. What was your research or your thoughts after the research about these?
Well, maybe it's interesting to start at the beginning. I'm a performer originally. I'm a performer of classical music. That is how I was raised, how I was educated. So I live and breathe on stage, and I love it to have my audience there and to feel this connection with the audience. And then I later ventured into contemporary music, and this was my main area, let's say, of performing all digital music, live electronics, and so on and so on. And then I got a job at a media college, actually, where I taught a totally different species of human beings, you could say, young people who were into popular music, all kinds of different popular music. And I was there as the freak from contemporary music who was supposed to teach them something about different aesthetics, which they had never encountered before. So this was my job, actually. And from there, and in that time, there was this, you probably all remember this Gangnam Style video. So my students asked me, we want to become as popular as he, how do I do this, you know? And somehow this was really funny, because this world of my world of the classical contemporary weird freakish music and the world of the young people who had this approach coming from popular music, somehow we exchanged and we inspired each other. And so at that moment, and some kind of music came out of that, which was different from what I was doing, which was different from what they were doing. And out of this situation, and out of this Gangnam Style hype at that time, I thought, what if I could connect my audience or could discover a new audience by getting in touch with them via social media? And so I established a blog, and I established a Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and I don't know what channel. And I tried to draw people in from all over the world into the creation of new music in a way. And I sort of wanted to make them acquainted with my passion. And on the other hand, I was really asking for, give me input. What is it that interests you? So we had to find a topic which was really relevant for them all, which was, in my case, very easy. It was identity, because this is a topic which is really, this is something everybody at some point in their life is concerned with. What is my identity? How do I express my identity? And what was really difficult then was that it was a global project, and we had people coming in from all over the world, actually, except for the countries where they have restrictions with social media. And it was really fascinating. So it was definitely not my ordinary audience, which I would have in the concert hall, but it was super interesting for me to exchange with them and to get influenced. And they gave me, we had calls for entries, for music, for images, for text, and they all had to do somehow with identity, and this was all incorporated in one artwork. And now I'm traveling with this artwork, and whenever I'm at a stage in town where there is somebody who contributed, I invite these people and ask them on stage and say, so this there is your part in this, what we did here.
Mm-hmm. Teresa?
Can I just add something? Because in journalism, or also in music journalism, it's exactly what we are thinking about right now. This shift from sending elaborated piece or elaborated radio broadcast out, and then people who like can react to it. But instead, really change this way of thinking, that the community is involved from the very first step, and we use the community as a research pool. We interact with the community before we do something, and it's part of the research. And then the finished piece is just one part of the progress. And then in the end, we reflect and feedback with the community. So this is a new thinking, and it's great to hear that also in music this shift is happening, because it's a digital shift that, so exciting.
Yeah, it's interesting that we are in the middle of a discussion where I expected us a lot later. That's the question: how do these technical possibilities change the artwork itself? This is what you started mentioning, Barbara, and this is what Alexander Schubert does when he does an online piece where people can contribute via social media on the internet, and then there's a performer who performs a piano piece at the end. So maybe if we are there, please tell me, how does, or is it, do you want the media to change the music?
Well, I'm not sure if the media really changed the music. I think it was the encounter between people that changed the music, and the media was just a tool to connect in a way. So, and I'm split, I must also admit, because I mean, doing an artwork via social media, that was a 4 years research project. And I was paid for that, and my contributors weren't paid. So they had to get something else out of the process. It was a lot of work. I couldn't do this. I had to feed constantly to feed the social media channels with content, with really good content, because otherwise people would vanish. And so I was really busy in these years doing social media before I could even start thinking about art in a way. And I think the artwork which came out of this is really very beautiful, but it's definitely not in the let's say in any kind of typical contemporary music circuit or something like that. Although people from contemporary music, when I present it to them, they really like it, because it's about storytelling. We are telling a story about different kinds of identities. So it's a very, very human thing which happened there. and maybe this is what people like, I don't know. So, but it's not so much anymore about contemporary music. There are elements of this in it, but my music making changed, and I guess also the way how people who contributed look at what I'm doing, that also changed, hopefully a bit, but it's really difficult to trace for me. But still, I love classical concert settings as well. So I don't think that there is the problem in that. I mean, I think this is just one part of the art, which is also very beautiful. So I wouldn't like to problematize it too much, although I know it's for a certain kind of audience, and it's not diverse enough, and we don't reach everybody who we wanted to reach, and still there's some beauty in it, I think.
Maybe we can go one step beyond, because we just stepped in the middle of a very complicated question. What are we talking about when we talk about digital music experience? We are not digital, so we are humans, but we have digital technology through which we can play with, we can have as interfaces, use it as interfaces. But there is such a huge field. We talked about social media. We have just a simple format of a CD, of an MP3 file, or a computer game. Ludga Bruma, what are we talking about?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think there are several aspects. One, for example, is that we want, with digital technology, we want to make it as good or similar to the experience of live situation, and that means similar to what our ears are able, what kind of information our ears are able to digest and to evaluate. That means, for example, that we introduce spatial or immersive qualities into digital music. But there is something going a little bit further, and that's, let me explain one example. It was a very long time ago. I was in a concert, listened to a violin piece of Nicolas Aruba. And after the concert, there was a transmission through radio. And I thought, wow, this transmission to radio is so much better than the experience in the concert, because you hear so much more, because the microphone is 20 centimeters away from the violin. You heard nuances of the sound, which was not possible. And as you can imagine, it's not possible of an audience of 100 people to be at the same time 20 centimeters from the soloist away. So there is a certain, let's say, simple quality of sound or differentiation possible with technology, which is not specifically digital. But with digital technology comes another aspect. It goes beyond this normal experience, and that, for example, the Kugel Auditorium enabled the listener to have sound from everywhere. That's our normal sound experience, but we could not have instruments everywhere, below us, above us, left, right, front, high, low. So this everywhere is something which is not practically not possible. But our perceptive system is set out to hear 360 degrees in every dimension, horizontal as vertically. So that meets our, let's say, perceptive options we have. So I think digital music can really take the options of perception we have, which usual analog played music is not always able to do. And then there is an aspect which is very important, that is interaction. And with the Einklang freier Wesen, with this software we have created, I have done pieces in the past where the people intervened into the composition process or presentation process. This kind of interaction enables the listener to be part of the composition in real time. And this is for me a completely new way of thinking composition, because what we usually have the classical way is you have the score, the orchestra playing the score, and then you have the idea or perfection. And suddenly with this installation we present here, you have not one way, not 20 ways, you have many ways of how you can perceive, and you decide. And it's the meaning of the perceiver, the audience is becoming different, because this audience is has a responsibility to act and create while they are listening and interact with the composition. It's not only louder or softer, closing the ears or opening the ears. It's much more dramatically. It's switching off voices, making voices lower in this case, for example. And this is a quality where I think the audience is becoming part of the creative process in the perception, which is not so easy possible with inside the concert situation.
Well, can I say
Sandeep, yes.
I agree with you, Ludga, but I have also some experiences which contradict it in some way. I was just involved in a festival in Montreal, and we had a concert planned for Klang Dome, for a sound dome, 32 speakers and so on. And then, of course, everything was put online. And after long discussions, we decided to do a YouTube stream with stereo and a separate ambisonic stream, where we simulated the Klang Dome in a 2D environment. And you could listen to both, but the ambisonics, for technical reasons, didn't have any still image, whereas the YouTube stream had a still image with just the name of the piece, nothing else. And guess which stream was watched more? Because both of them were available on the website. You could either click on YouTube or you could click on ambisonics, and yet most people chose YouTube, even though they had the option of being immersed, and it was clearly explained. Here you have the immersive experience, here you have the stereo experience. So I'm not entirely sure that this world is already there for us, where everybody wants this kind of immersive experience. We have been trained to have to think that what we see on the stage is the music somehow. And I think this training will be there for a long time. I want to go back to Peter Weibel's talk, by the way. He mentioned something that made me think about something in music that I find very interesting, a thought that just occurred to me. He talked about how we are the messengers for the virus. There's always the sentence, I think he quoted the sentence, the virus knows no borders. And he said, that's not true. The virus has a border of 2 meters. If the virus goes across borders, it's because we carry it across borders. And I was immediately reminded of the troubadours in medieval Europe, where music was carried across castles and landscapes like a virus, right? So the musicians were the carriers. They carried the music from one place to another, incorporating something from each place and carrying it onwards to the next place. And then I thought, so this is a facet of music Barbara has talked about, is traveling. The traveling musician is still a feature of was a feature of our music system. But I thought it has been sanitized in a way by 2 factors. One is the stage, where you sort of have, you have this kind of distance perspective on this person. The second is the fact that there's a canon, a repertoire canon that has been established, and everybody knows what to expect when to go there. And then you have sedentary musicians like orchestras who usually not travel, or until the 1960s, they did not travel at least. And so they were sort of sanitizing measures by a more sedentary world and maybe there was some kind of confinement of this isolation of this virus of music into something more ordered, something more specific. And maybe the thing that we're experiencing now, that we're breaking out of these boundaries, that we're breaking out of the concert halls, projects like Barbara's, like yours, and some of mine that I've been doing, where the place where the musicians are and the audiences is somehow irrelevant to the piece. Things come together in different combinations. Some are local, some are not local. Maybe that's a reassertion of the virality of music, or its virulence, musical virulence, that we can experience again. So it's not ordered, and the idea of perfection has to be abandoned. The idea of virtuosity is a capitalist idea in a sense, because you sell an ability that you have acquired for money, if you're virtuoso. So these are all very interesting ideas, but they have nothing to do with the practice of music in many cultures and many traditions. And maybe we get back to that kind of virality of music that's everywhere and not just offered by some for some. That was a rant.
Yeah. Yeah, Gina.
Yeah, sorry, I would just like to comment on that idea of virality. And I think, and also your example with the YouTube and the ambisonics versions, I think that's very interesting, because I think there's a lot about, that came through in my research. There's a big distinction between the kinds of experiences that musical experts have and those who are maybe like less versed in the kind of traditions of the concert hall, or of the kind of rules of engagement, I guess, or of contemporary art music, and when you're allowed to criticize, or what are you allowed to say about this music. And I think it's kind of important when looking at like the kind of digital and live experience, that that we need to think about who we're actually looking at specifically as a kind of target audience. Because if we focus too much on this idea of immersivity having to mean kind of perfect acoustics, or the kind of reimagining the perfect concert situation, I think that's a real loss in terms of audience diversity, because I think that's always going to be in a kind of experience that will appeal to those very intrinsically motivated, very specifically motivated to hear a specific piece of music performed in a specific way. And it'd be much more interesting to think of ways in which we could break through that concert experience, or like recreating the concert experience in a digital format. I think that's just a necessity in order to actually invite new people to contemporary music. Yeah, so I just want to bring in that idea of expertise at that point, because I think we need to think more about who are specific audiences for the kind of digital projects that we are envisaging as artists.
Barbara?
I'm wondering what kind of music we are now talking about, because now we jump back to contemporary music. Before Sunday was in classical music, orchestral music, but you also pointed to music from other countries, other cultures. Then we also think about, okay, the quality of digital recordings is so much better than what we can hear in the concert hall. For example, something like that, Ludga, maybe I misunderstood. Then we talk about digital media, like social media as an interface. So we are talking about all kinds of things. And it's, I think what we also talk about is value systems. And audiences react to value, they come with their value system. So for your first example, Sandy, you're a student, for him, it was very, very valuable and very precious to be able to hear music while he was in his village, and he developed a sort of ritual, as it seems, how to listen to this music. So other people have other rituals and they have other value systems. That's why they might come to a live concert. Then somebody else loves just this crispiness and the closeness of a good recording. So they think, okay, that's it. That's what I want. Or so I think this is something which we have to be aware of, that there or the interchange with the interaction with an audience. But then again, what kind of interaction is that? Is that what do we call creative in this interaction? So I think these are all really, really big questions which somehow lie behind this what are we searching for when we are listening to music, or when we want a concert experience, or when we prefer the digital experience? Well, this is just something I wanted to throw in.
Ludga.
I want to react or describe the situation. There was, as a telephone was invented, yeah, the reaction of the people were, oh God, the people will not meet anymore. They will not write letters anymore. They will only use the telephone. And Georg Friedrich Haas, in his talk, he says a little bit, there's a special thing about the concert and the human feeling, the human interaction. And this is not possible with media. This is true, but Peter Weibel says something else, basically that there is other aspects are possible with media. So what I want to point out is it's not the questions either this or that. It is the questions that how we integrate new opportunities into our vocabulary of perception. And what Sandem was describing, I was not really sure what was the reason for the people, but not to pick the HRTF, probably the spatial version, but when teaching spatial, the option of using spatial music, when teaching this to composer, you have to develop criteria, and even the composers don't have criteria. It's a new topic. You teach how to use harmonic, how counterpoint, instrumentation. You teach everything, but you don't. The historic vocabulary you don't teach is spatial appearance of sound or movement. That means there's another option coming into our vocabulary of perception, and it takes time to handle this and to evaluate this vocabulary, this new thing, because maybe it doesn't, it's overemphasized or underemphasized. For example, if you imagine the serial composers had 12 dynamic levels. And I think after a while they found out that it's probably not useful to have 12 dynamic levels because dynamic levels have a different sensitivity than pitch levels. So we have to learn how to use our ear, our perception, our social life, and it's a question how we integrate now this back to the historic example, how do we integrate the telephone in our catalog of behavior.
Mm-hmm. Teresa?
But I think it's also, you can ask the question, okay, how can the listener learn to understand a piece? But we can also ask, how can a composer learn to adapt to listening practices we have today? And in pop music, for example, it's logic that most of people, or many, are listening music through the cell phone speakers, and the mastering engineers make a mix for headphones and a mix for the speakers. And that's, I think that idea that the composer has a very high-end composition and the listener has to adapt by using headphones, that's not the reality of listening music also in a digital space. So
why is it not the reality?
Yeah, because it's the very specialized audience of contemporary music that might have these speakers at home and put the value there, you know.
But they are part of the reality.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a broader audience.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, because what you are referring is a little bit the question of quantity. Of course, most of the people would listen through earphones or in-ear phones. But that doesn't mean that we, especially we coming from contemporary music, fighting as a very small, tiny elite or a group for a more higher level of complexity, for example, information in music. I think we have to find out how much individualism we should accept in the. And I think Georg Friedrich Haas is pointing out this aspect not as an aspect to say everyone has to listen into the concert, but he's saying we should not lose this aspect. We should try to value it, and he doesn't say anything about quantity. So I think it is one aspect of several others, and we don't have one solution or one way how to listen. Yeah, and even final remark. David Bowie there was a article in the Frankfurter FAZ, and David Bowie was complaining about the loss of dynamic amplitude. I mean the dynamic diversity in sound, because everything is highly compressed to the maximum. Because people are sitting in a tram with their earphones, and only this kind of music works in a tram with a high-level background noise. So the music was reacting to this way and was getting, let's say, simplified basically on the amplitude level. But it's not that we want to hear in a concert highly compressed signal. Mm-hmm. So I want to say that we have to always think in different levels. No?
Yes, Sandeep?
I think that the last comments point to this, to the reality that Teresa and you and Barbara also and Gina mentioned, that I think a lot of the discourse on that, let's say, art music, is concerned with the fact that somehow art music has the authority to say what good music is or how music should be listened to and so on. Mm. And it has developed forms where this can be realized to the fullest, the concert form, and the perfect recording and so on. But the world we live in probably just is in a transition. And as Friedrich Hitler has said, you never lose the old technologies. So even though even though the typewriter came on, people we're still writing with pens, and now we have our laptops and people still have typewriters and pens and so on. Mm-hmm. So we never lose these technologies in our daily life, but they get relegated to an array of possibilities. And I think that what we're looking at is that the concert form or the presentation formats that we had up to now have gotten enlarged in scope and more inclusive in scope to other practices, techniques, and perspectives. I like what Gina said about the social perspective of the concert, because that's a very salient point. And there are other social forms that you can also do music in. They have been put to the side because they don't afford this kind of focused listening. But there are still occasions where music happens, and happens in a very important way to the people that are at that occasion. And I think just like in studies about diversity of music, there's this to talk of the provincialization of Western thinking. I think this is what this situation has forced upon us in some way. We are forced to concede, or we are forced to acknowledge or understand that the way that we have done music up to now in the ordered music systems of subsidized Western societies is not the only way that has a claim to seriousness, artiness, importance. Mm-hmm. It's one possible way, and it's still probably very satisfying sometimes. But I think in terms of discourse, in terms of looking at the importance, at the social importance of this, maybe there's a shift induced by digital technologies that we have to navigate now.
What about the skills we have to develop? Ludga talked about developing criteria for new forms of listening, for new techniques or things like this. I just heard an interview with a theater director who said that he was doing just rehearsing during the pandemic because he is a theater director and he has not the skills of a filmmaker, and he cannot compete with a professional filmmaker. Or if we talk about music and if we want to introduce elements of games, of game culture, or of other, or to do a YouTube tutorial or to stream something. These are all different formats, and other people are very good at it already.
I have a very quick answer. Sorry. I think it's time for collaboration. I mean, you should not learn to be a filmmaker, but you should invite a filmmaker, and if you want to do something digital, and collaborate, if you have the resources, if you have the funding, if you have the time. I mean, that the question of resources is the first, but I think time for collaboration, I would say.
Yeah, this is I just in preparation for this panel, I watched or better participated in a game that the Stuttgarter Oper launched. It's Glaube, Liebe, Hoffnung. It's a you walk through, as a spectator, you walk through a landscape like in a game, and then there are some music videos you can see on screens in the landscape. And this is made like a game, it's built like a game, but I thought, oh wow, if people who are used to games would walk through that, they would be so bored, because it's so just from a it's made for people who maybe have never experienced a computer game before. And that's also what Sandeep said about the two versions of the music on the internet, that the people were not used to it and don't choose it. And it's to make a really good work of art, I think you have to look for really good quality. For good,
but who determines what is a good piece of art and what's the good quality? I mean, then we are back at different cultures, different cultural settings, different value systems again. And also the collaborations. I really have the urge to react on that, because I mean, as teachers now at the universities, we were really thrown into this digitalness and the necessity of teaching, and we neither had the means nor often not the resources in the university, so we really had to learn fast and quick and really and there wouldn't have been time to look for, oh, where do I get the money from? I have to write an application or anything like that, you know. So it was just do it, and then we are dealing with a digitally trained generation, you know. They know how to do that. They know how to do screen recordings. They know how to use the camera. They know, I don't know, and even they work with maybe not the best equipment all the time, but sometimes they do. So I don't think it's I think a lot of collaboration is happening. B, I think if the opera in Stuttgart does something like that, they have their own target audience, and they probably are not very, it's probably an elder audience, and they don't need it to be so game-like as a younger generation would have had it. Then they have the means to produce something like that. So, I mean, we are again at so many levels of we are talking money now, we are talking culture, we are talking society, we are talking generations.
And skills, yes.
Skills.
Yeah. Teresa.
I just would like to introduce an example that works the other way around, because the Stuttgart example is the idea, how can we gamify a musical experience? But 1 year ago, there was a project that tried to musify a game. And that's very interesting, because using existing digital spaces, such as a a game that already exists and doing music in that game. That was really a hype in 2020. I don't know if you heard about these concerts in Fortnite or Roblox or Minecraft. So these huge computer games where US rappers performed, and I don't know, I think 23 million of gamers were listening at the same time with their own avatars. And there's also, and that's what I like to bring in here, there's a collective in California, and the ensemble whose name is that's the name of this collective.
What's the name?
And the ensemble whose name is that's so
okay.
The ensemble whose name is it's really not good for promo, I would say, not good for radio. But they are composers, musicians, and filmmakers, and they have all a passion for Animal Crossing. That's a social simulation video game for Nintendo. And when the first lockdown came, they discovered the musical qualities of this game. So they made experimental music using the in-game sounds of Animal Crossing. So this game, you have animal avatars who build houses, and you furnish the houses using your animal avatars. And this collective beats live in the game and makes a choreography. I don't know, they take 30 virtual toasters and the toaster sound and combine them with, I don't know, 10 washing machines, and every object has a specific sound. And out of these existing virtual sounds, they build an experimental piece. And it's very, very interesting because it's kind of a Fluxus approach, but in a virtual space that already exists, and the target audience is the game audience, but they are listening to experimental music. And that's always interesting for me when these communities are mixed, and we don't think, how can we do a game for 70 plus people who love Mozart? I think that inspires me, that to define an existing virtual space as an experimental musical space.
Yeah, that reminds me what Sandeep said before about the troubadour, because there I was thinking about a situation where a person has to adapt the his speech or his voice to the situation where somebody is standing, and develop a format. But Sandeep, you wanted to say something else, I guess.
Yeah, I wanted to say something else. There's one aspect that in your question, the question of the theater director, I don't have the skills to do this new thing. There's a famous German play called Die Weber, and there are many other texts about the Industrial Revolution and how it changed professions forever. So we don't have personal weavers anymore who weave our cloth. It's all made by machines. So I think that something that has been happening all along, the human capacity to build machines has reached the intellectual domain and has reached the arts in the last 50 years. So previously we didn't have machines that would create art. Now we have artificial intelligence machines that can create art all the time. Most of the music that you can hear on everyday soundscapes can be made by machines now. You don't need human composers to do that. And people who the still director is maybe in the situation of the Weber, of the weaver in this old play, where suddenly all the skills that they've learned for a lifetime are useless in that particular situation. And that is, of course, a horrible situation for a person, but it may be also a foreboding of what can happen more. I think the fact that a lot of the music that we normally listen to, and I include new music festivals, can be made by artificial intelligence softwares nowadays, means that the musical medium is maybe not the thing that we're looking for. And maybe the kind of social settings, new constellations, new collaborations are at the order of the day. I don't know, but I think that when we think about how to preserve the things that we have had in this movement towards the digital, which is also a human thing. Digitality is uniquely human. No animal or no one else does digitality except the human animal, and so it's an expression of the human animal, and it has reached the arts. We are changing through it, and I think this quality needs to be understood for its. That's what I call the virulence, the danger of it, which is expressed by this person who is scared. That person sees the danger of it, but it also has, as everything that humans do, a huge vista of potentialities that open up suddenly, and we have not begun to understand what they are.
So what you're saying is that you have to risk something and let something go, which is maybe not useful at the moment, perhaps, or yeah.
I was touched by some Facebook posts that I saw of pianists I know who are classical concert pianists who play the classical repertoire, and who after I think a month or two of lockdown said, I cannot play Schumann anymore. I don't know. I cannot play the classical repertoire. Are there other pieces around that I could play? Because somehow the repertoire is linked to this money earning situation and to the concert situation, to this feedback loop in which they were. And without this feedback loop, maybe it's not so exciting to play the same piece over and over again. And I found it an interesting observation that highly skilled people who are highly trained performers, successful people, would suddenly say that the repertoire I've always been playing and having a good life of it suddenly becomes stale in a situation where I cannot share it in the way that I'm used to. And maybe I need to do something else with my musical skills. And I found that interesting.
Yeah, that's a communication you need, maybe. Barbara?
Well, I find this really very anecdotal, this story. I mean, there are others who would say just the contrary, that they really enjoy now to, for example, I could say just the contrary is happening with me. I'm a new music performer and I have done a lot of digital stuff, and I have also produced music in special digital formats for the former digitalism, you could say. So I know really both worlds, but I could say, now you could find a Facebook post from me saying, oh, I really, really, really enjoy now practicing Beethoven violin concerto. So to me, this doesn't really say anything, if I'm honest. And also, I want to say, I doubt very, very much that artificial intelligence can nowadays already produce all the music we hear in contemporary music concerts. I really doubt that.
I didn't say all, most.
Even that.
I'm sure. There have been experiments already, and they have been proven to, yes, they have been proven to work.
Ludga's
you don't know them.
Yeah, Ludga and Gina. Maybe Ludga first, because Ludga has this microphone off and Gina was first.
Okay.
I just wanted to come back to the idea of kind of what Sandy was saying about AI and kind of automation and what kind of gets lost in that experience. And I just wanted to come back with an example from kind of the area of experimental pop or experimental kind of sound art, and a concert I was at by Holly Herndon a couple of years ago, where she actually used singing from the audience to train an algorithm, or she progressively over a couple of years in advance of her most recent album had been training an algorithm to feeding it all sorts of different types of music, including a lot of American folk songs. And so the audience then had the opportunity to sing some of these songs and have them kind of flow into what this little AI music baby was learning. And I thought that there was one kind of interesting example of kind of reconnecting around around something that seems so, still to us, it's quite commonplace in some ways, but AI still has that kind of like sheen of technological, of the automated, but it can, as in this example, be the center point for an actual musical experience in a live space as well. And I'm very excited about the idea of AI in general, in terms of how it could democratize or kind of break down the idea of authorship, or randomize the idea of authorship that we have around composition. I don't know if Sandeep or the other artists on this panel want to say more about that, but for me, I think that's one interesting aspect that we could look at more in terms of how to create participatory works, or kind of giving up that idea of how we construct material and giving it over to some other force in a way.
And what improvisation means, as in the AI projects of Jennifer Walsh, that's also a great exploration. But it was Ludger's part. Sorry.
Yeah, I think it's first of all, we can say artificial intelligence is able to produce complex behavior. Yeah, so that, I think this is clear. Yeah, and this behavior, it's a question: what is it? What can this behavior create? And first of all, the machine learning system works that it takes information which is already there and does something with it. But what does it do with it? Does it create something new out of it? And my hypothesis would be artificial intelligence is very good in merging, creating, interpolating situations. But the shift from tonal music to atonal music, I don't think artificial intelligence system would be able to do that. And there was in the past, as they had the rule system, David Cope and his system, he was able to compose Mozart and Bach very well, but he was not able to compose Beethoven, because Beethoven had these breaks of paradigm break inside the music. So I would say if you feed artificial intelligence system with Beethoven a lot, then it might be able to create breaks inside the music. But the question is how dialectic are these breaks, because the breaks had some meanings, a contrast. Why did Beethoven choose this type, this information as a contrast and not another information as a contrast? This had something to do with the fact that he had a certain intention, and I'm not sure if an artificial intelligence system will be able to create this kind of intentional, in the future, avant-garde thinking information. So I think there is,
without being too disrespectful of my colleagues, I would think that the description of artificial intelligence exactly describes what many composers who are academically trained and have performances in new music festivals do. They take existing models and they write something in that kind of style. And as a member of many juries, there is this code word where we say NMM, normal new music, and everybody knows exactly what that is supposed to signify. When you see a score written in normal new music. So I didn't say that artificial intelligence can produce Beethoven, but it maybe could produce some small masters or small masters of today, because the rule systems of today are even more flexible and even more open. And the aesthetic expectations of the audience are much less confined to a certain language. So I think that I don't only think that, I've seen experimentation done in that way, where audiences were shown things and asked to classify them as being composed by artificial intelligence or by a human being. And it's not easy to make the Turing test if you don't go to Stockhausen and Beethoven and these kind of people, where there's a huge canon of reception and interpretation around them already that has worked out how great they are So, but if you have other people whose styles are not so that well known.
Sorry, one last answer,
yeah.
and then I would like to.
Yes. It's another discussion anyway.
Yeah.
So we could imagine that a machine learning system takes all the information of thousands of years of musical creation, takes every piece in itself, and maybe then it is able to create something new. That's a hypothesis, maybe, but.
Okay, I would like to draw our attention back to the music experience and the digital formats developed. Peter Weibel was talking about the telesociety and about the senses which are extended, like the sense, the ear and the eye as the telesenses that we can hear and we can see through medias. And Bas Viras, the director of the ensembles for Einklang, freier, Wesen, at the first panel, he spoke about the importance of the body, that he was so lost in this project at first, like in a nightmare, because he did not experience the musicians and the ensemble he was directing as a body playing together. This is also part of the idea of the piece, that these freie Wesen, these beings are connected and disconnected, so free and still together. What about replacing the body, the feeling of a body, of togetherness, of a common experience through digital formats? Maybe you yourself have experienced works of art in digital formats, which were maybe good examples, or Teresa is.
Yeah, because it's interesting what's the body and what's a digital body, and for example, the voice as embodied sound is it can be digital as well, and that's the example that comes to my mind. I don't know if you know the tuning meditations by Pauline Oliveros. So these are it's a performance, it's an exercise in deep listening, and the participants of this performance follow certain instructions and sing tones that they hear from the others. So it's a very interesting performance. And during the first lockdown, so already in April, they were really fast. The widow of Pauline Oliveros and a conductor, Pauline, I don't know the name right now, and they organized a huge Zoom meditation, so the tuning meditation on Zoom, and it was very global. So participants from 30 countries, more than 1,000 people doing this performance, and everybody was singing. And that was really, it was a little bit cheesy, I have to be honest, but also very emotional, because you heard these connected voices, and this was a sound of the pandemic as well, because all these voices were isolated, but came together in this performance. And that was so interesting, because I think a lot about these formats, that we always talk about new formats and new compositions, but this old compositions from the 70s really fit perfectly into also this need of community in the first lockdown. And so there, these united voices, it was a body experience. You were singing in front of your computer, you felt your own body, you heard the bodies of the others. So yes, it is possible in the digital, I would say.
It also puts in focus the different spaces you're living in also, which is a reality. It's a usual situation in the internet. That
exactly, everybody has another microphone, everybody has another ambient sound in its room, and then for sure Zoom is not made for 1,000 people singing at the same time. It's maybe fine for 8 people discussing in a ZKM panel. But that was charming because these glitches of the software, and this for me is really an example when we say, oh, the digital doesn't have any aura, it's an embodied, the body doesn't matter. I think this example really proves the contrary.
What about the others? What were you doing during the pandemics? It's also a question. If you look in the evening, if you sit down and have your laptop still running and you scroll through the internet, what's new through the huge archive, which is growing also with performances and with archived music. What did you do? Or were you kind of afraid of the growing mountain of information?
No, I'm not afraid of the growing mountain of information. And I mean, there's a lot there, but I'm really Zoom tired. I don't know if you heard this word, Zoom fatigue. This is something I'm sitting in all these sessions, and I have my headphones on. I'm in my own environment. I don't see my friends, my colleagues. I just see faces on the screen. And I was really interested in a small festival in Belgium a week ago. So I really joined this festival on Zoom again and again and again. But then I thought I'm really missing this ritual to prepare myself to really go to the concert, to really make time, make space for that. Instead, I'm just having a quick bite to eat, and then I think, oh, it's starting now, and I'm on my couch or maybe even in my bed, and everything is not so tidy, not so concentrated. And so then I'm listening to that, and then I do something quickly in between because I'm sitting on my computer. So this is my workspace in a way. So I'm really missing going to a concert, meeting people, talking with people about the concert afterwards, and just having this atmosphere. And I really want to emphasize that I'm a digital person. I'm doing digital art, and I think there are great formats, but still I'm missing the real situation.
Yeah, it's not easy also to have an appointment with the internet in the evening, I guess. And Ludga?
I don't want to say something substantial, but I think what we should not forget is that we have now 100% Zoom and 0% concert. So this is not, that we hate Zoom is clear because it's an overdose. That's clear. What the question will be when everything is back to normal. How will it be, for example, if Thalia Ensemble in New York does a concert with a piece which I never was able to hear before?
Absolutely.
And, then I can participate, or also Modern or whoever is doing a certain thing where I'm really fond of or interested. And there I think will have in the future more opportunities because of course this crisis helped to normalize the relation to long distance perception, and that's probably what Peter Weibel as well addressed in his talk, and I completely agree. It's not a substitute. Telephone is not a substitute for a meeting. It's never. Email is not a substitute for a letter. It is something different than a letter, and it's an add-on which will live until no one wants it anymore.
I just wanted to say something really quickly. What you said before, Ludga, you said, how do we integrate new opportunities in our practice? I wrote that down here because I think this is really beautiful. And I think, as you say, there will be this archive of things which have been done in the pandemic. And maybe I'll address this later then when I'm not so tired of Zoom anymore. And I really love that it is there and that I might have the opportunity but I'm giving the word to Gina now because she wanted to say something.
No, thank you. I wanted to also just extend the idea of it being something complementary, that we can, even when things go back to normal, whenever that may be, or if they ever really do, we'll hopefully be able to still kind of blend, like going to live events and having digital experiences. And there's actually been a fair amount of research by Hassan Bakshi and David Throsby, who did audience research comparing experiences at online exhibitions versus like real life exhibitions, and kind of live streamings of opera house performances or concert performances. This is all pre-pandemic, and they really found there that the general idea among these audiences who go to a live theatre stream in a cinema or at home is that they see that as a complementary activity. But that was back in 2013, and I can imagine us going back to that kind of situation where if I can't make it that evening, then maybe I'll watch an archive performance, or that there's that kind of flexibility that people who actually live outside of cities or live in other contexts have actually been more used to doing. And I think there's actually also been, just in the last week, some really interesting data on how, from a UK organisation called the Audience Agency, on how kind of digital participation has been, and arts participation has been in the UK during the pandemic. And they actually found that a considerable number of people that discovered new forms of art and culture online that they may not have previously been able to access so easily. And there's actually greater participation from disabled audience members. So yeah, there's also a lot to think about how these things could be complementary and not be substitutes, as you were saying.
Yeah, Teresa, this is
Yeah,
also
Gina,
something I wanted to ask about, the diversification of the public, also usually through the internet, but plus through the pandemic situation. Maybe.
Exactly, that's also what Gina already mentioned, and I think it's so important to also think about access, because festivals such as Donaueschingen or Eklat, they are sold out very fast, and yeah, that's interesting who can get access. But I think we should also think the other way around, that how can we invite people from somewhere else into our concert by a stream? So not just the audience that is diversified, and we are happy that people from South Africa are listening, but how can they like be part of our conferences, of our practice, of our talking about music? Because now there's no excuse, I would say, when we talk about global issues or about music, to not invite people from the global south, for example, because we know how to do it with Zoom, for example. So I think the diversification should go in both directions. That's very dear to my heart. And I also, I have my doubts, to be honest. I can't imagine this hybrid format, because if we have now everything is specialized on how do we make a good stream, and doing a good stream is maybe not compatible with the live situation where you have a stage. And what happens with these new digital formats that are around right now? I think it's too early to really answer what stays, and if web concerts or web certs will be there in the future. But I really hope for this diversification, and contemporary music has the chance to get less elite through this, as optimistic. I'm an optimistic person, so that's why I'm saying this.
But the other thesis is that the internet is the place for monopoles, like big things like Amazon or Google. So that would mean that music in the internet is maybe not so, in the future, not as diverse as before.
But at the same time, the opposite. Everyone can place things into YouTube. and there's no filter except for certain filters. But political or China, a country has a certain relationship towards this openness. But the internet as well enables, for the first time, everyone to articulate himself or herself.
But in the podcast scene, there's a very nice saying: content is king, but distribution is King Kong. And I think that's also a question. Yeah, okay, we can upload a nice format on YouTube, but how do we distribute it? That's a question there. Where the monopole of Facebook and YouTube and so on really, yeah, it's a problem.
The mechanism of information, let's say, selection. This is something why is Google so successful? Because they developed a mechanism to hierarchize a lot of information. And I think we have to develop more and more techniques how to, for example, that's a good field for artificial intelligence to qualify, to create create metadata about I missed the right word, to get right metadata out of information, for example, audiovisual information. So if we have metadata, a description of what is going on, we can much better access and search. For example, these strategies still have to go on, and much more towards automated metadata or information retrieval out of sound and visuals. And if we have this better metadata, we have a better way to navigate through the masses of information. And then the second thing we have to learn is how to forget.
Yeah, we are still, that's a good thing that we are already into future. I'd like to ask, what about your maybe weird ideas or unrealistic or realistic ideas for music experience through digital media or with social media, something like this? Do you have artistic or other ideas?
I can tell about a project that I'm currently developing for a festival in Finland. And we were invited, I have an ensemble in Berlin, and we were invited to be in residence there, and now travel restrictions do not allow that. And we came up with a project that has one leg in Berlin and one leg in Finland with another group of musicians in Finland. And we have developed a mechanism based on ancient Japanese poetry contests that allows the ensembles to constantly exchange informations, but not in real time, always. Sometimes in real time, sometimes not, but per video or recording, in a ritualized manner, so that everybody knows what to expect at which time and when it comes and so on. And through that, in a 5-day process, which is totally public, there will be a concert at the end, but the concert is, as I think Teresa said at one point, the concert is just one product of what happens. And this process allows us to engage with places in the two cities, or the two places. One is not a city, a small town. And with people, integrate local people who are there with the musicians in flesh and blood, but then there are also others who are only there virtually, and to engage in a kind of constant flux between the local, the virtual, the now, the past, and possibly some projections about what to improvise on these things. So it's a very complex project, and I have hopes that it might work. I don't know if it will work, but I sort of, in a sense, it's not a project where I think one would have ever done it before, because it's, first of all, the technology wasn't at that point. We can all use our cell phones to record the videos. But also, we wouldn't have done it because we would have just traveled, and we can't travel. And I think that restriction suddenly opens up new, and has opened up new ideas that now we will explore in an artistic way. It has changed the artistic format that we proposed to the festival, that we realized with the festival. And it's not a online concert that's just film. It's a project that needs all the media at the same time and the live ones too.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting project. I would like to maybe not collect more ideas, but to ask Ludga Bruma about the performance we are going to listen after our long talk, which is going to end.
But I really would like to add one.
Oh, sorry.
I'm very short with
Please.
because you asked also, okay, it can be abstract or unrealistic. I would like to have a Netflix for contemporary music, where all the streams that are happening, all the media is united, you know, and I don't know, you have a membership and then you have access, and it's not somewhere on YouTube or somewhere on Vimeo, but on one platform. That's my dream. Just I wanted to add this. Sorry.
So that's a monopole platform which guarantees more order and not so much diffusion in the World Wide Web. So Ludga, maybe up to you. We are going to listen to Einklang, freier Wesen by Georg Friedrich Haas in the version played by the 5 ensembles of the Thalia Ensemble, the Ensemble Musikfabrik, the Ensemble Resonanz, Ensemble Modern, and Klangforum Wien. Are these the 5? Yes, they are all conducted by Bas Vichers. And they conceived kind of a game where you can play and interact with the music online. It's in the internet right now. But now we are going to listen a version, just one version, which we can't interact. What is it, or what will it be?
Yeah, it's probably an interpretation of the composition. Of course, that's nothing spectacular. But we extended the idea of which is formulated in the app you can use and download into a sound dome and binaural perception. And what we did is we moved instruments through the space and did basically decided which voices and which combination of voices are presented. So we muted certain voices, and then we had a mixing board and the sliders where we could open up certain instruments and not only switching on and off like in the app. So it's weaving. Weaving was a word Sandeep used before, but it's weaving the material in a live concert situation. So this was a improvisation we exercised, but it was done in real time, and we hope that you can perceive through the binaural. It's an artificial head recording. Artificial head means you have two microphones in the position of the ear and a nice head, which is just imitating our human perception. And when you put on, and that's very important, when you put on the headphones, then you are able to gather and capture some of the information. Even though the more experience you have, the more information you can gather. It's as well, you have to train our ear to learn to perceive these information of spatial differentiation, spatial movement, position, etc. So it's basically, we place you as a listener inside, in the middle of the sound dome, and inside the sound dome, you are surrounded by the voices of Einklang, freier Wesen.
And you maybe can close your eyes because it's more audio centered. Yes. So I thank you all for. Sorry. Yeah, use the headphones, and I recommend to all of our listeners and viewers to listen to the concert right now. And I thank Gina Emerson, who's like sitting left from me. Then to Barbara Lüneburg and to Teresa Bayer, Sandeep Bhagwati and Ludga Bruma. I'm Martina Sieber, and yes, thank you and enjoy the concert.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.